I'd
like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for February 5th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Arel? Here. Bucky?
Here.
Clava?
Here.
Kuhn?
Here.
Holt? Mattson?
Here.
Reichert?
Here.
Sandy?
Here.
Wasvik?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Nice. Reading and approval of the minutes from the January 8th, 2024 meeting. Mr. Reichert.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Mr. Mattson. Any discussion? Not seeing any hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved as submitted. Public hearings, final approvals, petitions, and minor changes.
3-1, vacation of pooling easement located at 2500 to 2600 North Washington.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. So this request is to vacate a 12.25 acre pooling easement at the future Lawn King site in order for a new easement to be established in the proper location. So on the exhibit here, the easement takes up all this area that's cross shaded, so it's really a majority of the site besides 3 residual areas. This easement was put into place following the 1997 flood and associated construction of the flood protection system. In December 2024, a replat and rezoning of this site was approved to enable the development of offices and a shop for Lawn King. And with this development and buildup of the site, this will result in pooling to occur in different locations than this existing easement provides for. Also, since the site has received a letter of map revision as part of this replat process and development process, the current pooling easement will need to be vacated so that a new updated pooling easement can be established that aligns with the LOMAR. This comes as a directive from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who's reviewed and approved this. And so with that, staff is recommending approval. I'll stand for any questions.
All right, any questions for Ms. Johnson before I open the public hearing? Mr. Budke?
So just to clarify, so we're vacating the easement. There'll be another one that comes into place. Will that be before us? Is that prepared now?
Yes, but I don't know if it's prepared.
So the Army Corps will draft another easement that will file separately. Easements can be filed directly with the county without going through this body because it would between the Corps and or however that would work, the ownership piece of it. The vacation is the public approval process that we need to do, and then it'll be reestablished. Because what happened is with the development of the site, where it will pool will change just based on how things are going to get built on the site.
Sure.
So they're establishing a new easement that'll kind of dedicate that new space.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? I will open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience want to step up and address 3-1? Please do so at this time. Not seeing anybody, close the public hearing. Bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Mr. Kuhn. Any further discussion? Not seeing any hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 3-1 passes unanimously. 3-2.
Plat of Washington View First Resub located at 3225 and 3311 South Washington Street.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. So this request is a pretty simple replat. It's just 2 existing lots here that will be combined to form Washington View First Re-subdivision. The 2 lots are currently separate. That's where the existing lot line is now. And they're proposed to be combined in order to construct a building addition that would, in the current state, be built over the lot line. This building addition will be related to the existing auto sales operations on site. And with that, staff is recommending approval. I'll stand for any questions.
All right, any questions for Ms. Johnson? Not seeing any, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience want to step up and address 3-2, please do so at this time. Not seeing anybody, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Ms. Sandy. Any further discussion? Not seeing any hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 3-2 passes unanimously. Communication and preliminary approvals. 4-1.
Vacation of utility easement located at 1910 North 52nd Street.
Ms. Grasser.
All right, so this vacation goes with the plat and annexation that follows. This area is just north of Washington, or excuse me, Gateway Drive. It's to remove this 10-foot utility easement, and it will be rededicated on the plat that comes next. It's time for any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions for Ms. Grasser? Not seeing any. Mr. Reichert?
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Ms. Sorrell. Any further discussions? Not seeing any hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4-1 passes unanimously. 4-2.
Plat of Correnta Lim 7th Edition, located at 1910 North 42nd Street.
Ms. Grasser again.
All right, so here's that plat of Corinth-Lem 7th. They are expanding the plat a little bit here. This is that vacated easement, and it'll be rededicated along this side. This is just to make room for an appropriate sized pond in the developing area. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Grasser? Moved by Ms. Sorrell. Second by Ms. Sandy. Any further discussion? Not seeing any hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4-2 passes unanimously again. 4-3.
Annexation of Correnta Lim 7th Resub, located at 1910 North 52nd Street.
Ms. Grasser.
All right, and so this is the annexation of that portion that you just saw on the plat. Again, this is just to make room for a larger pond for the developing area.
Any questions? Moved by Ms. Sandy. Second by Mr. Mattson. Any further discussion? Not seeing any hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4-3 passes unanimously. 4-4.
Ordinance to amend zoning map, rezoning from B3 to R4, Lot A, Block 51, Alexander and Ives addition, located at 1027 North 5th Street.
Ms. Edwardson.
Good evening. We're up on the north end, again, 1027 North 5th Street. There's a flower shop right next door, and I believe this is the old Red River Valley United Way. I knew Sierra would know what it is currently. So what's happening right now is 1027 has an existing house on the lot and is currently being used as a residential. That would make it a non-conforming use in the B3 General Business District. And so since single-family residential are not permitted in the B3, they're not able to receive financing for the house. And so the rezoning would put them into a residential status to allow them to sell and finance the house. So staff is recommending approval going to the R4. R4 would be kitty corner to this property, and most of the near north is R4, so that would be the district we'd be recommending. In years gone by, the theory was that we would phase out these residential units in favor of commercial, and the flower shop certainly has made that transition and things like that. However, we've had a couple of these come forward to the commission over the years with the non-conforming status. Recognizing a viable house, wanting to maintain that and have that continue on is the priority more so over the desire for commercial. With bricks and mortar changing the way they are and things like that, we don't see the much demand for the commercial as we did in the past, but we do have a demand for housing. And so staff is recommending approval of the rezoning.
Mr. Reichert.
And all that around there is R3, R4, is that the idea?
R4 is most of the near north neighborhood. I don't believe there's any R3s even in the near north. Even west of Washington, it's R4 and transitions to R2 and eventually R1 closer you get to the University Park neighborhood. But R4 would be standard in this neighborhood.
Okay.
Miss Sandy.
So what, but why R4? Why not an R1 or an R2?
To be comparable to the neighborhood, to allow them to have the different thing or the abilities to do what their neighbors could do if they wanted to pursue a duplex, and they're not proposing that at all. It's more from a staff perspective, just to be what's in this neighborhood and what's comparable to similar house structures like this.
So what can they do on that lot if it's an R4?
Residential up to, they could, it's dependent on parking and other things like that if they want to do more units. But residential up to, it's technically a high-density multifamily.
Build a skyscraper if they
Well, yeah, that's what I don't understand, because I don't know that that would fit in the neighborhood, and so if it's for the reason of selling and being able to finance.
Well, maybe I should, let me pull up the GIS real quick and just to give the perspective on what we were trying to do in terms of making it comparable to the, is there not a shortcut for? No?
And I will say the minimum lot width for a R1 is 60 feet. So I think R2 would still accomplish what he'd want. I don't know, I'd have to look to see if impervious lot coverage would get in the way in terms of potentially anything, but the impervious lot coverage is more as well. I don't know if he plans to go to a duplex. That would probably be the best he could do and still meet the requirements of that small of a lot. I think it's roughly a 50 by 140, just so you guys are aware.
So can it be an R2 instead?
It could,
It
yeah.
would, how, zoning typically, we like to try, we don't want to spot zone it in terms of we don't want one lot to just have its own special conditions. And so that was where we had fallen back to the rest of the near north being R4 and transitioning this to be similar. Most of the near north are single-family units. Some have been chopped up to duplexes or triplexes, but for the most part, they're single families with higher impervious surface allotments. And so to have an R2 here, when the whole rest of the neighborhood isn't that, from a staff perspective, we would still advocate for R4, but the commission can decide to do what they
So-
wish with that.
If you go down the street to the 900 block, those are single-family homes, but they're zoned as an R4?
Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah, there may be some duplexes in there, houses that have been converted in some of those areas. South of this, I think it's a multiple unit south of this one, directly south.
That would be B1,
Yeah.
I think is what we did.
There, that one is a multi-unit there.
Mr. Budke?
Yeah, I'll just say, like, I looked at this, I'm in favor of this. The idea of the R4 versus R2, that doesn't really frighten me just because of the lot boundary and the other sort of stipulations that come with that. We are kind of doing like a one-off zoning here, but it's in order to maintain an existing structure. So that seems to make total sense to me. Actually, my question for the planning staff here was, I feel like in my relatively short time on the commission here, there's been like a lot of these items that sort of meet this profile, kind of like on the adjacent to Washington, right? They're generally on the north side of Demers, and somebody's just trying to like make a transaction, and the zoning is totally in the way from a structure that predated that. Should we be taking like a little more proactive approach? Should we be like finding more of these, quote unquote, non-conforming properties that, and maybe changing the zoning or making some sort of allowance so they don't have to wait 2 months to go through our process?
We certainly could. It gets a little tricky in terms of the city instigating a rezoning. That sort of thing, we would have to get their buy-in and stuff like that to do that.
If it's not the owner's idea, typically it's going to be an issue.
Right, the city
That's what
comes
I've
in and
seen.
wants to rezone, you have to maybe start on a different foot than that, right? Because there's maybe some defense that comes up with that. But we certainly could look at that and try to capture, or at least try to document where they might exist to be proactive of it. Just because we do know housing, and if it's an existing house and it can be refinanced, we do have a need for that. So we'll certainly take a look at it.
Ms. Sandy?
Just to, on your point, Andrew, is maybe not going in and saying we want to rezone, more of a informational.
Sure. give them-
Whenever you're ready to sell your house, you may have issues. I think that would be
Yep.
welcome, because a lot of times, that might not be something that anyone recognizes until it gets to the title company or whatever, and by then, it's too long of a process.
100%, and that's the exact situation we're in with this one, right? And
Yeah.
thankfully, he doesn't have a sale pending right now, so
Right.
we aren't on a time crunch, at least that sort of thing. But there's probably no doubt that this would go quickly because it's probably in an affordable range. So we may, by the time this gets to final, he may have somebody pending a sale, so.
And it looks like from this map that the house right next door is in the same situation to the north.
The house next door to the north has been converted to a flower shop, to my knowledge.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the transition we were hoping to get folks to. But that being said, if they ever wanted to convert it, I don't know how much improvements they've made on the inside to it or not, if it could be easily converted back to a house or not, I'm not sure. But certainly we could take a look at it and see.
So was this R1 at some point and then we changed it to B3? Or were they always non-conforming?
I couldn't tell you that. I know the neighborhood has always been R4 since we started zoning in the city, I believe. I couldn't-
This lot and the ones all the way up to Big Sigs, right? They're all B3, all those homes. That's been the one area, I mean, to Andrew's point earlier, those are the one area I'm aware of that's had some zoning that has been, homes that have been in a B3. And so those have kind of been stuck. We could certainly have a conversation about, and I don't think there's anything wrong with letting them know, you know, we may be willing to entertain that, especially if this, presuming this one's going in the direction that you wanted. The other thing I wanted to mention, next month, we're talking about bringing, removing the floor on the lot size, because there's some nonconformities, people that have had to ask for that before doing a lot sale or a house sale, and that has been, they have the right zoning, but we have a federal rule that says if your house burns, can you rebuild? And our code specifically says if you're below 3,500 square feet, then you have to get a variance essentially. We're looking to remove that just to allow those, essentially so they can be rebuilt. We've been monitoring this over the last couple of years. We've been running them through the Board of Adjustments, which is what our process is. We've had nobody complain. Nobody wants to disrupt a sale. And so to that point, these are a lot of affordable homes as well, which I think this one is as well. And we don't want to lose those. And we're just causing heartache, I think, in terms of holding up some sales. So, and some of them haven't been caught until later. So that's been unfortunate, but that'll be, but we've talked about that probably coming forward next month.
All right. Mr. Rick.
Approval.
Thank you. Second by Ms. Sandy. Any further discussion? Not seeing anything. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 4-4 passes unanimously. Reports from Planning Department. Andrea.
That one is me as well. So I'll quickly run through this. I won't go through it word for word. Again, thank you to Commissioner Lenski for his work and his departure earlier this year, I guess. Last year for the commission, you looked at 87 different agenda items, 17 of which were plats, 5 vacations, 7 rezonings, 4 annexations, 2 code changes, and a couple miscellaneous items. So 2 of the plats, I believe, resulted in residential lots. And again, our 2050 land use plan is our guiding document for basing decisions with the commission. Did the code updates that you've heard multiple times now, so I won't get into it, but your side yard setbacks and your accessory buildings. Sierra is our staff liaison for the Downtown Design Review Board. Those meetings have significantly dropped since we updated the design standards, but still needed. The MPO Technical Assistance Committee, city staff sits on that technical assistance. And then Al Grasser sits on the executive committee for your P&Z appointed position.
Thank you, Mr. Grasser.
The site plans that Sierra and Haley usher through our process, 31 were approved last year. Big kicker here is the 0 multifamily complex last year. Zero mixed use isn't necessarily unheard of. We're just kind of stepping into that ballgame, but the multifamily is a concern going forward. Sierra and Haley also worked diligently. We got the site plan process on Camino 2 years ago now. Last year, they got all of our planning and zoning applications on Camino, and so all of that is going through in a more efficient manner. So thank you for that. The Sierra continues to be our staff coordinator for the University Avenue neighborhood as well as the corridor project. They've had some huge successes in terms of organizing the neighborhood with some events. The fire hydrant painting program is a notable one, as well as some banners in the neighborhood, as well as some other different events that they're coordinating and building community around. The housing piece here would be the most concerning piece, I guess, going forward into 2025. We're seeing the single-family detached. I don't believe we had any plats come through last year for single-family detached. They were, the two that did come through were both attached. That would be the Haven Court and the Kings Walk townhouse development on the south end. And so not necessarily that that's concerning, right? Because there's some efficiencies that come with attached construction and things like that. However, those price points are still coming in over at 400,000. So even though in theory you're saving some, we're still seeing high prices. And so we're trying to figure out how best to accommodate and counter that. The multifamily, again, 250 to 300 units a year is what we typically like to see to keep up with our average community growth rate. We had a big year in '23 with some of the Memorial Village coming on or getting constructed, Franklin, Beacon, some of those things. But we had a null year last year. And so trying to keep up with that on an overall average basis is the goal. Hopefully we'll see some projects come in this year, but we'll, again, hope to, so the housing across the board, right? Both multifamily are down, single family are down. The single family that we're getting are coming in very high. And so housing across the board is kind of what we're looking at for this year. And again, a staff achievement, Sierra got our certified planner's candidacy last year. She'll get the full certification after her 4 years, and I think she's already 2.5 in, which makes me feel very old.
I remember when you started, I feel really old.
I know. I know. It's not going well for me. I'm not aging gracefully. We did some professional development. National conference was close by, so we were all able to go to that. And again, we continue to maintain our state networking abilities with the North Dakota Planning Association. Housing, a big thing for 25. Some of the industrial things that are looming, we'll see when they get to fruition and get brought forward. And then legislative, so. I can jump. Any questions, or I can jump into legislative thoughts,
good.
comments?
Oh, Mr. Butke?
I knew I wouldn't get it.
Yeah, you couldn't get off that easy.
I said housing too much.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the housing, right?
Yep.
That was my takeaway. You highlighted that too. What is like the department doing about housing right now? Like what actions do you have in your power?
I certainly am a big ball of yarn. If it wasn't, the whole nation would have already figured it out by now. And so it's a little bit of what can we pick away at. We're looking at the parking code to try to figure out how to best update that, to chip away at that a little bit. There's also some construction things we're looking at with engineering. Can we
Talk to the 3 or 4 guys that own all the land.
There's that too, certainly. We certainly have a limited amount of folks interested in developing, right? But if they do, are there different things that we can look at in terms of reducing construction costs? You know, Al's probably not going to like me, but reducing right away and like some of those other things and considering that. But those things all come with a spin-off effect, right? You reduce right away, you have to haul snow. You do a different material for pipes, you take more risk for maintenance into the future and stuff like that. So all of those have to come with a conversation of a give and take and what's best to land on. And so we're trying to kind of coalesce as a staff as to what makes sense to recommend, but ultimately it'll be decision makers to determine that risk, to determine that change, those different spin-off effects of costs, so.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Butke. Okay. Legislative updates?
Sorry.
Or, I'm sorry, Ms. Sorrell, I didn't see you.
No, that's good, sorry. So we have some big projects looming on the south end, both of that interchange and when, or if ever, if Sanford's coming. I know that's a huge chunk of land that is being held up due to all of that. The interchange is getting planned, and I assume, so there's that, right? So do they just sit and wait for Sanford to decide what they're going to do so you can move forward with some of the other land that can't be done? Can't be
Well,
used
yeah,
down there
there's
'cause they're gonna-
pre-planning going on, so I think our staff, engineering staff, have been looking at plans because there's lots of things go in where the utilities go, and some of the corridors that we're looking at, there's interchange justification reports that are going on. The interchange is still, I can't remember the timeframe, but maybe like a 2030, you know, we start getting going on some of that, and I hate to even throw out a year, but I'm not too sure if Al's
He's nodding.
nodding yes or no.
He's
but,
nodding.
I think that's the time frame. You know, Sanford is not, you know, they own the land. They knew that they were out ahead of things. So
Yeah.
if you wait until it's already built, then the land value had went up. So
Right.
so all those things are working together. The next round, as we start to get into that land use plan, some of you have maybe not have gone through some of those previous rounds. You'll start to see some of the pre-work that gets done too in terms of laying some of those things out. And, you know, there's another big project that, you know, is in front of city council that'll be at one of those interchange intersections. And so council's still weighing that one as well, but that, you know, that one's out there as well for, I think everybody's aware of that one, that could obviously have an effect on traffic and, you know, how we plan for that from a planning and zoning standpoint, and all that would be in front of you. They have to go over the first hurdle first. So those are all things that are still being done. I think to talk about the housing one before, staff is looking at some options, and we hopefully will have something in the next month maybe to share. I just can't share it right now, but there is some behind the scenes things we're looking on to find out if some of the options we're looking at are favorable and if they can move forward. So.
Mr. Reichert?
On that issue, where are we at with amending the building code in order to get rid of the sprinklers on fourplexes and maybe eightplexes that are lower or something like that? Is there anything we need to be doing, or can we push that along?
I didn't see any state legislative bills come through on that, so that would be a local initiative. I'm assuming state didn't push because probably the fire marshals and things like that weren't in favor of that. I was kind of hoping we'd see one on that, let them do that battle for us. But we certainly can look at it at a local level. It was one of those that we thought the parking would be more doable, at least in a short-term basis of it. Our staff isn't super knowledgeable on the building code, so it's more advocating for something we think might be a good idea, but not fully being able to explain. So we have to partner up with the inspections department, and they have some concerns about it. They're not ready to leap with us just yet. And so there's some internal dialogue going on as to how to facilitate that and make that happen. But it would have to be a local decision to amend our building code.
I think it's really important. Is there any way that we as a body can do anything, or?
We'll note that, you know, I think I've heard that there's an interest, and to Andrea's point, I thought maybe there might be a bill, but the state, the bills are what they are now, so we've cleared that hurdle. She'll go over that next. That one's not going to be on the list, so it is a local issue, so we'll bring that up and raise that. And it's I already got some phone calls from fire and building inspections from our previous conversation, and so they watch. You know, I think there's some of those folks that are watching. So
I like that. I like that. Turn on your mic and say that.
So we already have a sign committee. Why don't we have a housing committee? And that's,
Subcommittee?
yeah,
We have to establish a parking subcommittee tonight.
whatever. I mean,
It's on my
think
list, sorry.
yeah, we keep bringing it up,
not
but
on my
we need to get
agenda.
all the I mean, if we need to get the fire marshal and, you know, the inspectors, and I think we just need to get everybody or a group at the table that is
we'll work on an
Working
Bring
committee.
education.
that back? I
Yeah.
thought council was working on that.
I think I just got a text from the head of the building inspections. I think the time frame for coming forward to city councils and next year, So just so you're aware. So they do watch, but this could potentially be a one-off, but we can talk about at least having a discussion with that. That is ultimately a city council, but they do, obviously, this is a recommendation body, so we can discuss what the next options would be and perhaps put that on a future piece, so another education piece.
Because to do that, you'd have to get the insurance, you'd have to get everybody to buy off on that.
There would be definite conversations with the city attorney because by the city opting to amend a international building code, we do take an inherent risk by amending that in terms of what some other organization has determined best practice. By lightening that up, and now I'm speaking just barely of my knowledge on the topic, and so I don't want to go too much forward on it, but my understanding is that there would be a little bit of a risk, but we'd have to figure out how much that would be, and again, is it worth it?
We all have immunity, we're fine.
Well, I will say we have heard you, and we'll work on something. It may not be next month, but in the coming months here.
Yeah, Mr. Rao, we could definitely figure out a subcommittee if we can get, maybe Ryan and Andrea can reach out to me and say, okay, we've got fire marshal, we've got this and that, and let's pick a couple zoning members and do it that way too. Something to talk about and plan and what you guys see.
I think it's about.
So
It's about weighing the options, I think, of.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
I would suggest that maybe a conversation about it, but I don't know if, have we voted on our stance on
No.
changing that? Because I'm of the feeling that they should continue with fire suppression. I'm a very huge supporter of that, and so the cost of life is more important in my eyes. I have one at my own house. So I think we need to be sure that everybody's on the same page if we're going to engage and really push one way or another.
No, well said. Okay,
Well, certainly, yes, looking into it and discussing it, and we're certainly our role is to bring forward suggestions and thoughts and stuff like that, and you guys make the decisions on it after that, right? So we'll look into it and the pros and cons, and what's the right number? Is there a right number? Certainly, I'm sure inspections and fire already have their list.
and there might be
Ready for
other
me.
ways that a committee could find to save dollars other than fire suppression as well.
Correct.
There's a lot of other things that you could find,
Correct.
or maybe the equipment of that can get a little less or something. There's a lot of ways you can skin this cat. All the ponds, fill them in, put fourplexes in every pond in Grand Forks, you'd have it nailed.
The hose that comes up.
As long as you're okay
I
with
had
the
to, I had to
streets
look at
flooding.
Al and say it. Okay, legislative update, or?
Yep,
are we
I
halfway
can,
into it?
I won't go through each one of these. There are a few housing bills I'll point out. The Housing Development Fund, that would be a state assistance for infrastructure dollars, which would be a huge impact. So we're really hoping for that one. City's going after that one. 2030, I believe, is the Housing Finance Agency Housing Incentive Fund, which typically falls into the grant dollars to your affordable housing, low to moderate income affordable housing. There are high dollars associated with that, which would be huge on the affordable realm. Commerce having an additional housing program, I can't remember which one 2225 is. That's too generic of a description for me to remember. Helping with infrastructure, there's another infrastructure one. The non-conforming structures, non-conformings has come up in the last 4 to 5 legislatures, and it primarily, the language aligns with what we would ideally get our code to anyway, and so it's nothing to be concerned about. It again goes back to, if it burns, can it be rebuilt? And the way the language reads is that if it meets fire code, if it's not encroaching into right-of-way, if it's not encroaching into a neighbor's property, if it is physically set on a lot where it can be rebuilt, let it be rebuilt. And so the language is written very well in terms of covering those things. I think when it was initially proposed, it was no matter what, let it go. So that would mean no fire, no, if it was over and encroaching into an alley, we'd have to let it be rebuilt. So that's kind of where, as a city, we were watching it because we do want to pull those encroachments back when they are a concern. But if it's an existing house that's meets all those other parameters, again, let it be insured, let it appraise, let it finance, let it go. So we're supportive of that. We're just letting that one, not doing any proposals or any changes with that. And then different sidewalk bills, contract for deed, water management, procedural publication notices, lot of discussion on data centers at the legislature, transit, multimodal funding aspects, things like that. I won't get into all of it. There's over 1,000 bills this time for legislative, so it was kind of hard to narrow them down in terms of what may exactly be a planning and zoning purview. But the benefit is that there are some housing ones out there that we should see some additional dollars going to different projects.
Mr. Budke?
Quick comment, since we've been talking about housing tonight, and you pointed out that I think these top two involve some sort of assistance, or maybe like, when you said that, my thought was, okay, that's great that people are like aware of this as a big issue. I want to just throw this out there. I think oftentimes when there's especially like an affordability issue, like we focus the solutions on the demand side and not enough on the supply side. And I'm thinking back to the last item where we had zero multifamily or single-family detached in the entire calendar year. So let's please not lose sight of the supply side.
And I will say the Housing Incentive Fund is traditionally utilized in a supply larger complex model just to get that affordability down as much as possible along with those dollars. And so we do typically see those HIF funds used in a complex. You're like Jackson Flats, like the one behind Lithia on 36 that was just recently built. So those types of developments and things like that, we see those funding going towards.
Perfect. Is that it?
For legislative, yep.
Yep. And is it my turn? I guess it can be whenever I want it to be.
You certainly can. Those are the site plans under review and approved.
Why don't you go ahead with the monthly update, Kamal.
Well, those are the site plans under review and approved. A couple parking lots, couple truck washes. The school additions are more for security, funding additions, and then 7 brew coffee's been approved, so. And then we'd be looking at the parking subcommittee, so.
Perfect. I didn't know where you had me stuck in. So I did get one member to reach out. We would like a couple, 3 people to be on the parking subcommittee. I know Mr. Budke had reached out to me, so that's one. Anybody else would like to? Mr. Mattson, way to go. Or were you just saying aye?
Sounds like fun.
It would be extremely.
I want to oversell it.
Yeah.
We're a hoot.
Probably go with one more, just 3 is nice. 3 is always nice. Mr. Reichert, way to be a man about town. Okay, thank you, Mr. Reichert, Mr. Budke, Mr. Mattson. I appreciate you volunteering.
We'll reach out for schedules. Our goal is about mid-March, just to get ahead of whatever you might have on your calendars, so.
Perfect.
That would be it.
Anything else from the planning department? All right, anything else from the commission? Moved and second to adjourn. Meeting adjourned, thank you.